Welcome to Widowed Too Soon, where real-life widows and widowers come together to share their stories of survival, faith, and the journey of finding hope in the darkest of times. Whether you're newly widowed or have been on this journey for some time, each week we're here to provide you with inspiration, practical advice, and the reassurance that you are not alone. You were made to not only survive, but thrive. And now here's your host, a woman who has walked this path herself, who finds solace in writing, joy in speaking, and freedom in dancing like nobody's watching. Michelle Bader Ebersole.
Hey friends, are you dreading the holidays? Is this your first year widowed? Or you know how bad it was last year and you're not looking forward to it? You don't know if you can get jolly and bright like all your friends. I hear you. My first year as a widow was so hard at Christmas time. My husband was Mr. Christmas, like for real. He loved everything about Christmas. And so that first year, it was so difficult to get through the holidays. But over the years, I have developed strategies that have helped me to not only survive the holidays, but thrive in them and have joy and find new traditions and find new ways to do things. So I'm super excited to bring to you my first interactive session. This is going to be held Monday, November 4th, 6 p.m. Pacific, and it's going to be an interactive session where you're going to get into small groups. We're going to talk about ways that you can move forward in the holidays. You're going to meet new friends. You're going to have other people who get it, and I'm going to share with you different strategies that you can use to have a great holiday season despite what you're going through. So make sure you sign up in the show notes. There's a link. It's limited to 15 people only. So you want to make sure that you sign up right away. It's $29 and it's going to be a great hour and a half to meet new friends, get great strategies, and find a way to have a great holiday season. So hope you can join us. Welcome to Widowed Too Soon. This is Michelle Bader Ebersole. I'm so excited to be back with you guys with another guest. I know these are the favorite episodes. I know you had to sit through me last time, but this time I'm so excited that not only is this a podcast listener, she's also one of my good friends now. I'm sitting here with Kim Lentz. How are you today, Kim?
I'm doing pretty well, Michelle. Yourself?
Yes, I'm good. My hair's a little crazy because I was on a walk in the rain. And so, we just have to roll with it. Most people listen, so they don't see. Some people might see it, but we just go with it. But before we get into your story, I'd love to share how we met. So tell me about, I can't remember, you found the podcast. How did we connect again? Was that it?
Yes. I found the podcast and just several days after my husband passed away, and I'd never listened to a podcast before of any nature. Just wasn't part of what I did. So, but I was desperate and I was just looking for any help that I could get. And Widowed Too Soon was the first one to pop up, and I started listening, and that was the first time I smiled. That was the first time I laughed.
Wow.
And I just didn't have anyone around me at that time that had walked this journey at all. And so it was just so amazing to hear you speak about everything I was feeling, and that it was okay, and that
that's so awesome.
It's gonna be rough, but it's something that can persevere. So that's how it all started.
I love that. I always mix everyone's stories up. And then we got to do grief recovery together, which is when we really got to know each other. And then you came to the retreat last year, and you're from Iowa, and you got on a plane, came to Washington. I didn't know at that time how out of character this was for you. And you were signed up to be in a room with 2 other people, but thankfully my guest room was open so you could have a little space.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then you went to our retreat that we just had,
Yes.
And that was amazing. What was, I didn't even warn you with this question, but like, what was your takeaway when people ask you about the retreat? Like, what was your favorite thing, or like, what did you love about this one that we just had?
Everything. I loved it
Yeah.
all. It
Mm-hmm.
was, the surroundings were amazing. That just added to it, but at its core, it's the people,
Yeah.
it's there is just something that you cannot put into words,
Mm-mm.
what it's like to be in a room of people that understand and that get it. And there is just nothing like that. And
That's
it
true.
is such a good feeling,
Mm-hmm.
amidst kind of everything else that feels so horrible. So,
Yeah, I
mm,
would say, yeah, definitely for me, it's the people. Actually, before, even though I've done a lot of widow work before last year, I'd never been in a room with that many widows. Like I've worked one on one, but to see, like last year we had like 20, and this year we had a smaller group of, there were 11 us widowed. There's something like definitely unique that you don't have to explain it. You just get it.
yeah.
And I don't know about you, but like when I'm in new circumstances, like I was at a new Bible study yesterday, you always know it's going to come up. And there's that
Yeah.
awkward moment. Like with the widows, you don't have to, you already know that they know. But
Yeah.
there's that moment when I'm talking, it's like this class about Holy Spirit led parenting. It's actually really good.
Mm,
But they're talking about, you're talking about your kids. And I'm like, okay, when do I bring this up? And then, oh, there was a part in the book. They did not write widow in there. I said they need to add widow. It was like, maybe you're single or parent or divorced or parenting alone. And I think before I think I brought it up through my son. I was talking about my son's grief because he lost his dad. That's how I brought it up. But then when we got to that page, I'm like, they need to write widowed. That needs to be a choice. And it was just,
yes.
that awkward moment when it's going to come up. Like,
Yep.
oh, are you married? And like now it's actually easier for me to just say yes, and Joel, and not explain the whole thing. But
Yeah.
sometimes I still explain it because the kids aren't his kids. And it's just, yeah, you don't have to go through that when you're with widows,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
always feel like there's going to be that awkward time when you have to explain it to people. And I just don't love it. But anyways,
Right.
let's
Right.
get into your story. Thank you for sharing about all those things. So
Yeah.
we love to get started. It's one of my favorite things, hearing like your love story of how you met your husband and what life was like with him and all of that. So I'd love for you to start wherever you want with that story.
Okay. Okay. So I was 33. Chad was 37 when we met. I had a grand total of, I think, 3 dates under my belt. Up to
Wow.
that point, that was just not, I don't know, it just was not happening for me. And this is a long story in and of
That's
itself,
okay.
but I will
I like
shorten it
long
up.
stories. No, it's good. They're interesting.
My my parents decided they were going to buy an elliptical machine for themselves, for my sister and her family, and for me. And we were all going to get on this health journey together. And so, like, my sister and I researched what kind we wanted. And of course, there was one store that had this particular brand. And at the time, I lived in Minnesota. The rest of my family lived in Iowa. We met up in the Twin Cities and found this one that we wanted. And the sales guy, super nice dude, was not my husband. The sales guy was not my husband, but super nice dude. And he, of course, wanted to sell 3 ellipticals, right? And so he's like, sure, we'll deliver all 3. That's fine. 2 states, 3 different homes, no big deal. We'll do that. So great. Well, a couple of weeks later, then I happened to be at my parents' house when their elliptical was delivered. And, honestly, I do not remember my husband from that night, but it was the salesperson that came, who was a super sweet guy. And then his boss came to help him, and his boss was Chad. And yeah, I could not, if somebody asked me that next day, like, who are those dudes at your parents' house, setting up the elliptical? I'd have been like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just trying to help them get it set up and, get on their way. And so after they left, then they went to my sister and her family's house and set up their elliptical. And then once they were done with that, my sister calls and she's like, something's up with one of those dudes. And I'm like, whatever, Shelly, I'm 33. I've like been on 3 dates. There's nothing going on, And of course, like I was in sweats and I had,
Right.
my hair was in a ponytail. I didn't have any makeup on, like,
Yeah.
whatever. But so she's like, yeah, something's going on there, like whatever. And so then the sales guy had called her several times, like right after, like, how's your elliptical? And Shelly's like, I don't know, I've had it for like 12 hours, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But then and then he's like, well, what about your sister? Like, what's the deal about your sister? And so, we, over those next few days, like figured out, okay, somebody's interested. And so they were scheduled to come, the same two men were scheduled to come to set up my elliptical at my house then the next weekend. So they came and did all of their work, set up everything, did what they were supposed to do. And then Chad asked me out. And I said, sure. And we spent, I think, 5 or 6 hours on the phone that night, just talking. And we went out the next week. And by our second date, I knew that was it, and I could never get out of him when he knew for sure. He does not like to talk about any of that kind of stuff. But in about 4 months, we were engaged. And
whoa, I didn't realize it was that fast.
Yeah, it was. It was. I think everybody is just like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Like you had never really seriously dated anyone.
No.
And then here he comes and you're engaged in 4 months. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure my family was just like, oh my gosh, I hope she has not completely lost her mind. But, of course I met Chad and liked him. And, so, so it was fast, but we lived like an hour away from each other. So, and he, at that time, he was working like nights, weekends, just all the time. And so we did spend a lot of time on the phone and getting to know each other. And, we came from very, very different backgrounds, very different kind of families. And he, at the time, he had sole custody of his son, who was 15, I think, when we met. And so and I did not have any children. Obviously, I had not had any relationships prior to that. And so that was something that I was like, wow, this dude is responsible and caring and kind. And, like a lot of people wouldn't do that regardless of the circumstances. And here he is raising his son. And, so that was, just hard to kind of meld our two worlds together because they were so different. But it worked, so then we got married a year after we got engaged. We all went to Florida.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my family, his family, some good friends. And
was it like a beach wedding?
It was, yeah. We got married on the beach. Very, very interesting day that was. I get a call, so I had hired a wedding planner there, even though we weren't having a big wedding, but just so she could get the officiant and make sure where we were on the beach that was okay, and kind of that kind of stuff. And so we had talked to the minister a couple times, and of course sent him stuff. And I get a call from the minister's dad that like probably 4 hours before the wedding. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do your ceremony today. And I'm like, what? Who are you? I don't know who you are. And he's like, yeah, I'm so-and-so's dad, and he can't do it today, so I'm going to do it for you. And I'm just like, what the heck? So I call the wedding planner, and she's like, I don't know anything about that. And so then there was like this, rigmarole and whatever. So it ended up not being his dad. It was actually the minister that was there when we got there. But then before I got there, everybody else was there, and there were some guys that were fishing and for sharks. And Chad went down, and Chad was a very affable dude. Like he could talk to anybody, very, very easygoing. And he's just like, hey guys, like this is a public beach, you know, you can do whatever you want. We are going to get married and the ceremony is going to take like 10 minutes. And if you could just please not walk between like us and the water, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate it. Right. And so of course I learn all this later, but so then we start, you know, I'm walking down with my dad on the beach and it's beautiful. And we start saying our vows, and I started saying my vows, and there's a shark being drugged between us and the ocean with these dudes, like 3 feet away, maybe from us, because we were probably 6-7 feet away from the water. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Is it in some pictures?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I gotta see that.
We got a pic of the shark. So yeah, so in the middle of my vows, I just stopped and I'm like, oh, there's a shark going by. So then everyone was laughing and, you know, and it was totally fine because it makes a great story, right?
Yes.
But, you know, I'm sure other people would maybe not have been quite as amused at that, but I'm just like, wow, you know, like,
it's interesting. There's a shark in my wedding. I mean, who else can say there's a shark in my wedding? Like,
I mean, yeah,
you're the only person I know.
Not a lot of people. So,
funny.
Yeah. So we did that, and it was short and sweet and beautiful, and just, you know, kind of like it was all a dream in a way. But yeah, it was wonderful, and we settled in around the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and that's where Chad and his son had been living, and and the rest of his family fairly close by, and so yeah, we just did life, you know, had the normal ups and downs of any other, you know, married couple, but there was never a time I questioned whether Chad loved me or whether I loved him. We learned that we have very different communication styles, and, you know, how to make that work. And there was that solid foundation that just made everything feel very stable and very real, and just nothing was left to doubt or question, which, you know, the more we go through life, the more I realize how unique and precious that is. And, you know, I was lucky enough to have that. And we just did not, you know, the first few years that we were married, he did work a ton. And so like our dates sometimes were going to the grocery store.
Right.
Chad did not find that fun at all. He hated it, but I did. I thought it was so much fun because I was at the grocery store with my husband.
Right.
You know, like it was fun. And then we would just laugh and joke with each other. And, you know, so like you can turn anything into a good time if you're around the right people, I think.
Yes.
And, you know, so we just laughed a lot, and we're both super hard workers, and family is super important. We would travel once a year with my family, my side of the family, and man, such good memories. You know, Chad he just fit into my family so well. My niece and nephew were pretty young at the time, and they were very jealous, and were having trouble with Aunt Kim having somebody else in her life initially. But you know, he just was so good to them and fit in with my brother-in-law and my sister so well, and my parents. And that just wasn't, I mean, I remember like being concerned about that the first vacation, like, oh, how is this gonna really be? But it just was never an issue. Chad was always the first one to be like, yeah, I'll go play pool with you, or I'll go get coffee with you, or I'll go on a hike. Or he just seamlessly melded into our family. And that was such a blessing for all of us. And, you know, there just wasn't any strife or, so it was was just wonderful. So many good memories of vacations together. And, we ended up moving to Iowa to be closer to my family a couple
Nice.
years ago, and about 3 years ago now. And, Chad had to give up a lot of things to
Yeah.
move. And it was for me because I wasn't loving my job. And I wanted to be closer to family. And he loved his job and was close to his family. And he did not hesitate once. He just said, "Let's do it. Let's go. I am excited for
Wow.
you. Let's go." And, looking back, like, I really appreciated that at that time.
Yeah.
But looking back, like, that was one of the many things God did to prepare me
Yes.
for what was to come.
Mm.
And, that I wish I didn't have to come about
Right.
in this manner, but, thank
Mm-hmm.
goodness for those things. And another one of those things is, I think it was back in 2017, we had finally kind of found a church that we liked. And we both grew up in churches where, like, adult baptism wasn't really a thing. You just get baptized
Oh,
as an infant,
okay.
and that's what it was. And so we started going to this church and seeing this adult baptism stuff. And at first, I'm just like, that's kind of, like, I don't get
Mm-hmm.
it. But that was my, lack of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so we ended up getting baptized
Oh,
at the
cool.
same time. Yep,
I didn't
yep.
know that. That's so
Yeah.
special.
Yep, that was great, amazing. So such a blessing to
Yes.
have done that, kind of for so many different reasons. But,
Mm-hmm.
um, I can look back at that and say, yeah, I know that's when Chad was saved. And I got to be there to see that. And
Mm-hmm.
I I mean, just saying, he probably wasn't going to do that if I wasn't in the picture. Like, God was important to him, but he wasn't, like, that just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't probably on his path. And so, of course, God used me. It wasn't me, but,
Yes. Yeah.
to do that. And so I was just looking at those pictures the other day of
Yeah.
us that day, and, in the water. And, um, just, yeah, what a blessing. What
Yeah,
a blessing
that's
that was to be able to do that together. And so, yeah, looking back on all those things were preparation for both of us, for what was to
yeah.
come. But yeah, so we moved to Iowa in 2021. Yep, fall of 2021, and got settled. And so then we were like a half an hour away from my sister, and my nephew and his wife. And then, at the time, my niece was going to school about 20 minutes away from us.
Mm.
So we joked that she was our third roommate, and she would come over. And she would come over sometimes when I wasn't even home. She loved
Yeah.
football. I hate football.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not
sorry
my
for anyone
thing.
out there that likes football, but I
Mm-mm.
cannot stand it.
Right? It
And Chad
takes
loved
forever.
football. Yes, it does. And it's so, like, yeah, I just can't. But Chad loved
Yeah.
football, and so does Maddie, my niece. And so she would come over. Sometimes I wasn't even home, and she'd come
Mm-hmm.
over. Chad would make her a meal. Breakfast was his
Nice.
specialty, and they would
Uh-huh.
sit and watch the game and just hang out. And, oh my gosh, how special is that?
That's awesome.
It's it was just so amazing to see the relationships that were built with Chad in just my little sphere,
Yeah.
and then I just think of all the other ones, and all the other people that he impacted throughout his life. And but so we kind of got settled in. And again, just kind of doing life. We
Yeah.
bought a new house, and so we had all sorts of stuff to do and things to figure out and things that went wrong. And all of the all of the things that are just part of life. And
Yeah.
but we were just loving. We started a game night with my
Oh,
family,
fun.
so once a month we would get together, and we hardly ever got to the games because we would just end up talking the whole time
Oh,
and
fun.
laughing and just having a good time. And um so just being able to get to do those things and be geographically closer to my family and have
Yeah.
some more of those opportunities was great. Um, and again, kind of all in preparation for losing Chad. Um, so that day was, started out like about any other day. It was June 9th of 2023. I was not working that day. So Chad got up, got ready for work, took care of our dogs, and um, did all that kind of stuff so I could kind of sleep in. And we chit chatted for a couple minutes about my niece was going to have a going away party that evening. So, of course, everybody was going to be there for that. And so we talked a little about logistics of that. And then he said, okay, I'm going to go to work. And I said, great, have a good day. I love you. And he said, I love you back. And we gave each other a kiss, just like we did every other time. Which, looking back, I'm so grateful for now. But, and then he was gone. And I was just doing, I was cleaning quick. I ran to the grocery store fast, and I had a doctor's appointment. And when I got done with that appointment, I called Chad, and he didn't answer, which was not unusual. If he was with a client, he wouldn't pick up. So I just left him a voicemail, and I did just have this weird kind of feeling, and obviously had no idea what was to come. But I got home, and as I'm unloading the groceries, my phone rings, and it's a Des Moines number, and I never pick up a number that I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't ever do that. And something told me to pick up the phone. So I picked up the phone, and it was a person from the Des Moines Police Department. And they asked me to verify my name, and I did, and said, are you, married to Chad Lentz? And I said, yes. And he said, are you at home? And I said, yes. And obviously I asked him what was going on, and he said, I can't tell you over the phone.
Oh my goodness.
And so
Scary.
I knew, like, right then I knew, like,
wow.
I knew, because if he had gotten hurt, they would have told me to go to the hospital. I could not imagine him getting arrested.
Right.
But if he would have gotten, some weirdo thing, misidentity or whatever, like, they would have been like, or he would have been calling me, or however that works. I don't know how that works. But, somebody would have been like, your husband is in jail, or, whatever. And so, like, I knew. And so the guy's like, this is your address, right? And I'm like, yes. And he said, okay, I'm headed in your direction. And so I think there were that's where things split. And like, one part of my mind was like, okay, I need to change my clothes. I need to let the dogs outside. I need to put away the groceries. I need to, like, make sure the house looks decent for this dude that's going to show up to tell me that something awful, like, so stupid things. But like, so all of that's going on. And then I called my sister right away, and like, told her about the phone call. And I just remember telling her I was scared. Like, Shelly, I'm scared. And I don't know that I've ever said those words before out loud. I've said them in my head a lot different times, but and so she's half an hour away. She and my niece jumped in the car, and I called the police department to make sure that wasn't some scam.
Right.
I'm like, like, you just never, you don't know these days. And so they're like, yes, we have an officer that needs to speak with you. And I called, a coworker of Chad's. Have you seen him? This is what's going on. And so then he starts to panic. And so the police officer arrived at the house, and my sister and niece weren't there yet. I let him in, and he told me to sit down, and he just said, I'm really sorry to tell you that your husband was killed in an auto collision.
Oh my goodness.
And his body's going to go to the medical examiner and his car is here. This is my card with his case number, and I'll be in touch with you. And
that's it. Like, did he
that
just
was
leave and you
it.
were by yourself with this news?
Um, Towards the end of our conversation, my sister and niece had gotten there, and so he told them, or I told them, or whatever, and
Yeah.
then shortly thereafter he left. But then my sister and niece were there, um, and that's really when the nightmare started. And
Yeah.
um, talk about like before and after defining moments in your life, like.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, so I called my parents and his family, and um, there's no easy way to say that,
Right.
and you just never think that you're going to be in that position, and yeah, so it was just shock for a long
Yeah.
time. But I remember turning to my sister probably within a half an hour of learning that Chad was gone. And I looked at her and I said, I just do not want this to make me bitter and
Mm.
angry for the rest of my life. Like,
Mm.
Chad wouldn't want that. I don't want that. Like, nobody wants to be around a person that's like that. And like, this has happened, and it's happened to us, and um, we're gonna have to figure it out, right? Like,
Wow.
so yeah, I mean, I I think our language, there are no words to describe
Right.
um, sadness and pain and despair and desperation and torture, and all those things just don't cut it. And I think it's just really so complex. Grief is so complex and is so different for everyone.
Yeah.
And um I'm not the same person I was. I've had to grieve for that person that I was, and I've had to watch my family grieve for the person that I was,
Mm.
and my family grieve their own loss, because Chad was an integral part of so many lives. And so there's just all these levels,
Mm-hmm.
of loss, and it's just overwhelming and consuming, and there just are no words. There are no words to describe it.
Right. It's
Yeah.
something so painful. And I believe it's painful anytime, but I believe just from all the widows I've talked to, there's an extra layer of pain when it comes out of nowhere. Like when you're not expecting it, that just if we have sickness, we have what's called anticipatory grief. We know it's coming. But when you have no idea, it seems like, not to diminish anyone's grief, but just from people I've talked to where it comes out of nowhere, it seems to be like this extra, it's like an extra layer of grief. Like you had no
Mm-hmm.
idea that it's like whiplash. Your whole world just changed. Like the floor dropped from under you, like all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's such a hard place to be. And it's interesting. I've never heard anyone else say you had to grieve who you were, and other people had to grieve that. I'm curious, what was that person like? Like, how are you different now than then?
Mm-hmm. Well, now I think this is a heck of a way to get your priorities straight.
Right.
I would have liked to learn that lesson. Like, I feel like my priorities were pretty straight before,
Right.
but this is a heck of a way to learn to be eternity focused.
Mm-hmm.
I sadly was not eternity focused at all prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
Hadn't really thought about it too much, which, not proud to say that, but truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything now is tinged with sadness.
Yeah.
Whether it is a little thing, a big thing, a happy thing, a tough thing, it all has this sting of sadness to it. And that you can be laughing and think something is funny, but then the next second it's like, oh my gosh, I want to tell Chad about that.
Right.
Or just a million different things. And so I just don't think you can shoulder that and be the same person.
True. Yeah.
I just don't think you can.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was a worrier before, as very good, like very proficient worrier. And I was like very skilled. And, I remember like I would hear sirens in the background and I would immediately call Chad and ask him if he was okay. Cause I would worry that those sirens were for him.
Wow.
My sister and I this is maybe inappropriate, but my sister and I would joke like that we would end up, we'd end up together when we were super old because our husbands would be, gone. And I always worried about like when that would happen, but I could never fathom that it was going to happen so soon. Chad was 50 when he passed away. And it's just, ended up being 3 months before Chad died. His uncle, who was only 5 years older than he was, had passed away. And we'll never forget that day. That was obviously very, difficult. And Chad was close to his uncle. And we were sitting in our car after the service, going to the cemetery. I had the urn in my lap. And I looked at Chad and I just said, honey, can you imagine? Can you imagine? And, I had tears coming down my face and he just took my hand and he just couldn't say anything. He could not, he just could not bring himself to talk about stuff like that at all. And I remember, I was very grateful for him and appreciative of him always, always. But that day I was just like, thank God I have Chad. I'm just so lucky and so blessed to have Chad. And I feel so bad for his wife. And that was just 3 months before I was in that same position.
Wow. That's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the pain was, so you had just experienced that. And then 3 months later, you went through it yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. So difficult because you're in shock. What were those first, if you can remember, I know some of mine's a blur, the first few days, weeks, months, what was life like for you? After this, did you have to go back to work right away? What did your sister come help you out? What was it like?
Yeah. So, just amazing family, my sister and brother-in-law and my nephew and his wife and my niece and my parents, and my work family were all, and still are, just super supportive. And, so I did not have to worry about work right away, which was a blessing.
Yes.
And, my family's just like, whatever you need. And of course, at that time, you have no clue what you need.
Right.
But I knew that I didn't, I could call any of them and
That's so great.
they would do anything that I I needed. And I just, my sister and I would talk and be like, we just need to say whatever comes into our head. Like if it's, like inappropriate or like we're going to let it slide. Like we are just in this pit, and we have just got to be like straightforward. And, that was helpful, I think, because you just don't, no one knows how to act in situations like that. And, so one second we're laughing about something silly Chad did, and the next second we're just bawling. And, and we still do, like, that is still just pretty much daily life. But, yeah, I mean, that having that support is priceless, certainly. And I work at a veterinary clinic, and they closed the whole clinic for Chad's service, so everyone could come.
So beautiful.
And I'd only worked there for like a year and a half. And so, that's a blessing too, to just have all of that support. And it's not in my nature to lean on people or be vulnerable with people or any of those types of things. I guess that's one thing that's changed a lot. But but man, these people were showing up for me, and people showed up for Chad, people I did not know, that had known Chad before I met Chad.
Right.
The things that you hear from people. I mean, nobody's going to rip on somebody that just passed away, right? But
stories you never heard. I got some of those. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. And just how cool that is. And it's like, I know he's a super awesome guy. I mean, I married him, right? But then to hear other people say like how much he touched their lives and how important, he was in certain areas of their lives, and all of that is just amazing. But then all that goes away, and everybody else gets back to their regular life, and you're left with a life that you didn't ask for and had no plans for, and nobody's got a list of things to tell you, like, okay, check these off the list and you're going to be fine. And that's kind of that's the way my brain likes to work. So for a while I was like, okay, I'm going to read these books, and I'm going to do grief recovery, and I'm going to listen to podcasts, and, I'm going to go through Grief Share, and then it's going to be better. Right. Well, all those things, very, very helpful, certainly. And, I strongly encourage everyone to do all of those things, but it is not something that is ever going to be okay. Like, it's just not. This is something that I will carry forever. I will always miss Chad.
Right.
I will always wish I had more time with Chad.
Yeah.
And that we would grow old together, and all of those things that aren't going to happen. That is always going to be with me. And it's just pretty much up to me how I want to carry those things and what I want to do with them. And I think that's well, actually, I have if you don't mind, I have 2 little journal entries.
Oh, I'd love to hear.
Would you mind me?
That'd
Okay, so
great.
The first one was about a week after Chad died. And it said, grief manifests itself in so many ways. Physically, it's like an iron hand encircling my throat, a boulder on my chest, an ache in my heart that is unrelenting. Shivering, so much shivering. Food holds no value. Time is a nebulous entity. How can the world just keep going? There is only sadness, despair, and a sense of foreboding. How can I feel so hollow, yet so full of pain? oh God, I need you.
Mm.
Darkness has enveloped me.
Wow.
So I think that pretty much encompasses in the words that we have available to
Yeah,
me,
that's beautiful. I
that,
mean, sad, but you have beautiful writing. I didn't know that you were a writer. Like, that's
oh,
beautiful.
I'm not.
Well, that is, I'm
I'm not.
sure so many people are going to relate to those words that you had written down.
But I am very glad I did just get this journal out. I haven't written in it for a while, but I did just get it out this morning.
Mm,
And I am so glad I did write in it.
right.
It was a struggle. I do
Yeah.
not really love to journal.
Mm,
And so anyone at any stage of your journey, I would recommend just try to
definitely.
jot some things down, because it is, time is going to muddle things a bit, and
Yes.
grief does that and all of those things. So it is nice to be able to kind of look back. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
even wrote, because I didn't want to forget, because I was with Luke as he died. I didn't want to forget any of it. So I actually wrote down details, what we said, what we did. And I'm so thankful that I have that now, because I don't remember all of that stuff, but I have it written
mhm.
down. And then also journaling is just so good for us, so therapeutic. And then to read it, I just did this at the retreat. I actually did this on the podcast that just came out, read the
Yeah.
journals. And it's so different to see also where God has taken you. I love
Mhm.
going back and saying, whoa, that's where I was. Like, I'm thankful I'm not there anymore. So it's good on many, many reasons, many levels. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another entry that I had, I feel like um, this was a letter to, I think this was part of Grief Share, maybe. We're supposed to write a letter to
Mm.
a friend
Oh,
that we
okay.
knew was going to be going through grief. And from pretty much that first day, I just felt like, okay, I have two choices here. I can wallow, I can be angry and
Yeah.
bitter and sad and um, just waste away,
Yeah.
or I can trust in God, lean on Him, and just fight, And so this is a letter that I wrote. This was probably maybe 3 to 4 months after Chad passed away. A letter I wrote for someone that I knew was going to be encountering grief. So I said, "You will have a formidable journey ahead of you, one which will bring you to your knees many times, one that will teach you that heartache isn't just an expression.
Mm.
Your whole world will change, and you have no say in this. Your sounding board, your partner, your support, your comedy relief, your errand boy." Chad was
Mm.
so good about like going to get food and stuff all the time.
Nice.
Um, your food deliverer, your constant companion, your quiet stability will vanish. At the same time, you will have to learn how to do things you didn't even know existed. Talk to many people outside of your sphere. Insurance, the medical
Yeah.
examiner, like oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh, all of that stuff that you don't even think about it. You'll cry numerous times a day, not be able to see joy in anything. Everything will be cloaked in sadness and despair. Yet those around you will expect you to be better, feel better, be less sad within a month or two. Everyone else will go back to their own lives. You will sit in a pit so deep and dark, filled with your unending tears, anguish and despair, yearning for one last hug, one final kiss, one last conversation with your person. You will also be torn in your faith, grateful that you know your person is in heaven with Jesus, but so hurt, feeling betrayed that He allowed this to happen.
Mm.
Your very foundation will be shaken to the degree that you wonder if it will remain intact. You will question who you are, wonder why you were left behind, feel you can't grasp your purpose, you can't see that you matter anymore. And all the Bible verses, the devotionals, the worship music, all the diatribes in the world won't immediately change things and make you feel better. You will have two choices. The first, not to get up one of the many times that you're on your knees Forsake Jesus. Let the despair and depression eat away at your soul until you are just a shell. Or you make a conscious decision many times every day that with Jesus' help, you will not allow these circumstances to ruin you. You double down on your faith, you lean into Jesus' promises, and you fight. Minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month. Fight like your life depends on it, because it does.
Wow. That is so amazing. Like, it's exactly like those feelings that you go through. But I like how you turned it around. Like, it's like so sad, all these things are going to happen, but you're going to fight for it, and that is so beautiful.
Thanks.
So is that what you feel like happened? So you went through, all the questioning, all the things. I love how you talked about, like, yeah, you're feeling these two different things. So you go through all of that, and how do things, I mean, I know you still miss Chad, as we all miss our person, but how did life start getting better for you? Like, feeling, where you're not completely consumed by this.
Yeah. I mean, there are days I still am.
Yeah.
Truthfully, but I think it's getting easier to rely on God. It's getting easier to not wallow. And I think there's somewhere along the line, there was a conscious choice that grief is part of me. It's my companion. Didn't ask for it, didn't want it, certainly, but it's here, and it's here to stay. And I get to choose how I use that, basically. Yeah. And do I want to cling to God? And because I know that's the only way. Otherwise, there's not a way,
right,
at all. And I think over time it's not easy,
right.
but I think it gets easier to make that choice. And yes, we have to feel it. What we feel, God can heal.
God can heal. We change it to that now.
Yeah. So I still cry. I still, it's all the million small things every day that make me think of Chad and make me miss Chad and wish he was here, and all those things. They're all going to be there forever. And that's part of my life now. And I mean, that is, again, you can look at that like, oh, that's so sad. And, it is. And it's awful, but it is. I mean, it just is. And so, like, you just got to decide. Yeah. You just have to decide.
Yes.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a new widow, like someone who just got widowed?
Yeah. I love all the guests that you've had. All have wonderful advice. And I would second pretty much everything everybody else has said. I think one of the hardest things for me maybe was, like, you got to give yourself a break.
Yeah, true.
Your capacity for everything has changed. And it's going to be changed for a real long time. Your level of patience, your level of concentration, your ability to put up with somebody else's BS. Sorry.
Yeah.
All of that stuff it's going to change, and you've got to give yourself some grace and give yourself a break, and just be okay with that. Again, that doesn't mean you can just be a jerk to everybody, or, like, that's okay. But maybe you can't do all the things that you did before. Maybe you can't, you just don't have the capacity to take on.
Yeah, that's good.
The things that were easy before, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about that.
That's good. That's good.
Yep. And then find a community. You got to find people that
Yes.
get it. You have to find people that get it. And I yeah, my default is isolation, for anything and everything. And, that doesn't work. That doesn't work when you're
No,
going through
it
this.
doesn't.
And, um, even though you don't want to, you've got to find people that get it and
Yeah.
lean on them
Yeah.
and help each other.
And I love what you have done. You have recently volunteered to be a leader in a Widow Goals group in your area. So I know
Yes.
that's out of your comfort zone, but it's another like proof that God is using you. You know, He's making beauty from ashes, and you're going to be able to help people in your area, just like I was able to help you. And it's going to continue to do this domino effect. That's what I'm so excited. Listeners, if you don't know, we're launching, we've been in the Vancouver, Washington area, but we're launching in 6 more locations right now. And so it's super exciting. And so listeners, be aware that probably in January, I'll be opening it up to anyone to apply to be a leader. And so you might have the chance to do this. But even before then, you can start your own group. Just make a Facebook group. It doesn't have to be Widow Goals group. You can do anything and get widows together. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I knew a few widows, but I just started a group in my area because excuse me. I was just telling the girls at Bible study that even though God talks to widows, I think 119 times, or it talks about widows in the Bible, that we should take care of them. No churches in my area have any widow ministry. It's nuts. And the girl was like, okay, well, I work for the church. Can I put your website as a resource? I'm like, yes, please do. Like, I want people to find it. So now it'll be connected with this church, which I'm so glad. Because there's a lot of churches in this area. I was so disappointed that there was nothing. But the point is, I love how you've stepped up to do that. And I'm excited to watch how your group is going to grow and what that's going to do for you also, because we heal as we help other people. Like it's this beautiful thing too. And what would you say has been the most challenging part about being widowed?
There are so many things.
I know. You can say a few.
I think that kind of everything being classified as before and after.
Yeah.
It's tough, and like I said before, everything now is just tinged with sadness. And someone will be like, oh, I'm glad we can all get together. Well, no, we can't all get together because Chad's not here.
Right.
Those things are just hurt so much. And I think just every aspect of life is touched by this.
Yeah.
There is just not anything. I was thinking about knee pads the other day because I was going to scrub the baseboards. And then that made me think of when I bought knee pads for Chad before he laid some floor, So then I'm crying and knee pad, seeing a couple walk hand in hand, or seeing a couple arguing in public. I'm just like, oh, you shouldn't argue with each other. You should be happy that you have each other, so it's just, everything. And I'm still figuring out, I yearn to get to the place where when I think of those things, it just makes me feel grateful.
And you probably will.
Not just immediately sad.
Right.
I have a ways to go with that, but
that's okay. It is like, it's not just time heals. We know that's a myth. It's what you do with the time, but you've done a lot of work with the time. But there is something about the further you get away from it, the less it does, the intensity of the pain. Like I can now, when I think about Luke, it's mostly like I smile and I think of these memories. I mean, there are still times like our would-be anniversary and things like that, or graduations or stuff that I cry. But I would say most of the time, and 4.5-ish years out, you're just a little over a year. So I do think that time does make a difference, where mostly it doesn't hurt like it used to. I'll always miss him. I know that, but it doesn't hurt like it used to. So just something that happens over time. Were there any songs or verses that helped you through your time?
I still have this song goes through my head probably 30 times a day. Same God by Elevation Worship.
Yes.
Uh,
That's a good
yeah,
song.
we sung that at his funeral, and yeah, just yeah. Praise You Anywhere by Brandon Lake.
That's good.
Is another fave. So Will I by Hillsong. Death Was Arrested by North Point Worship is a goodie. And Raise a Hallelujah probably
those are good
those
songs.
are all on repeat for me. So yeah.
We sang this song at church the other day, or maybe it was at the Bible study, and it was something that there's a words that says death no longer has its sting or something. And I really just thought it brought me back to Luke's deathbed, and just like, I mean, yeah, it does sting, but it's the point that we're going to heaven, eternity, and just remembering that death doesn't sting like it could if we knew we'd be separated forever. But just like, I was like, oh yeah, I really like that death, doesn't have its sting, because we're going to see them again, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'm so proud of you, because I met you like a year ago. It was very, very fresh when I first met you, a little over a year ago. And just to see the work that you've put in, because it is about what you do with your time. And you did grief recovery, you've done grief share, you came to two retreats, you've really done the work, and you volunteered to be a leader. And it really is like, it's amazing to see. And like, it is a domino effect, because I know that your life through this episode and through the work that you're going to do in your local area, it's going to help so many more people. And then they're going to go on to help people, and so on and so on. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing to see, and I had so many people help me along the way that told me, as our good friend Stacey Campbell Waits, she was one of the very first people. I mean, I talked to a few, but she was the first one that was like, whoa, like, we get it. Like, we became instant friends. Like, you get this. And she's been widowed twice. And like, so she's somebody, like, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had her help. So it's so cool to see this like domino effect of how God uses us when we let him, when we let our pain become our purpose, and we say, okay, I had to go through this. I didn't choose this. I didn't want this, but because I'm here, let me help other people. Like, I want my life to help other people. And I see you doing that. And, like you said, you'd rather, like, sometimes easier to just isolate, but that's where Satan wants us, because then we're not going to do any good for God. But you've fought against that and like got way out of your comfort zone, especially last year when you didn't know anybody. And flew out to Washington for a retreat. I mean, that's huge. Like, what do you think motivated you to get so far out of your comfort zone and do that?
I think I had never experienced a level of desperation like I had, and I like, this is hard. You like, this is awful. This is hard. This is going to be terrible no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I mean, I might as well be uncomfortable too. If this could potentially help, like, we'll just add that, to the mix. But I mean, you have been instrumental for me. God has used you in such amazing ways, and I am so grateful, that you do what you do and you are who you are.
Thank you.
I can't express it.
Oh, thank you.
I don't have the words for that either.
Oh, that means a lot. Like, it really does. And I read your letter. It was very sweet that you and some of the girls wrote to me at the end of the retreat. And that was very, very meaningful. And Joel was like, I want you to put these on the wall and like read them when you get discouraged. Cause I do get discouraged a lot, because podcasting is a very lonely job, especially that I don't have a co-host anymore. And so it can feel like, okay, I've been doing this for 3.5 years. Like, is this really helping? But hearing from you and other people, and then this is really cool. I don't remember if I've shared this on the podcast or not, but I recently connected with a woman in South Africa who is about to do grief
Wow.
recovery with me. And she found me through the podcast. And we talked through Facebook the other day, and she wants to get started with grief recovery. And it was just like, wow, God. And the week before, 2 weeks before that, someone in Ireland, we talked. She found me on the podcast.
Amazing.
A girl in Tanzania I've been in touch with for years. Like, it's just crazy when you know,
Yes.
and I don't think she'd mind sharing this, and I'm not saying her name anyways, but the woman, I asked her what, wasn't a podcast interview. I was just curious, what is the most challenging thing for you being widowed? And she said, I don't know if it's the same for you, but here we have to wear black for a year. She said, I had 3 black dresses I had to rotate between, and I feel like an outcast. I was like,
Oh,
I am so sorry. That is like nothing. We don't have that in our culture. And they also don't have any money from the government. Like, I get, Social Security for my kids, all that stuff. If they're under 18, they don't have anything like that. It's a totally different situation. And it just, my heart goes out to especially widows in other countries where they are outcasts, like they are in a lot of countries. And it just breaks my heart. That's actually, here's a dream that someday we do some kind of like Widow Goals mission trip, and we go help widows in like third world countries and places where they really need help.
Yeah.
And like really pour into them, because a lot of times it is where they are outcasts. And she also said she felt like she didn't really fit in with her friends, which we get that too. But
Yes.
just that, like, if you had, she said, no, you like have to wear black for a year. I'm like, we didn't wear black at a service. Like I can't imagine what that, where people, like, you have a label on your head that says widow pretty much, and everybody knows it. Like, that's would be so hard. But it just kind of like just showed me like how God is using this podcast literally all over the world. And it's just exciting. We are in a huge time of growth with these groups launching everywhere. And then everyone's like, when you're going to have one here, when you're going to, I'm like, okay, hold on, because it's about to be launched that you can do it. Like, if you want it, because it used to be people, I want one. I'm like, just start one, and they don't really know what to do. But we're putting together like an exact, like, this is how you do it. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So people could just be like, okay, I'm ready to be a leader. I'm probably going to interview people, to make sure they're a good fit for our organization. And then it'd be like, okay, here's how you do it and go. And I see it. I mean, I was just blown away. We were just hoping to have like 2 test groups, and we have 6. And to just see, like, I'm guessing like by the end of 2025, it'll be like 100 groups, or I don't even know. It'll be interesting to go back and listen to this and see. But I just feel like we're in this time of growth, and our community, Widow Too Soon community, is growing. And it's a great, like, I just feel like we're right on the verge of so many things. And thank you for stepping up to be a leader and making a difference in your local area. And hopefully we'll be able to, another vision, I'm just sharing all this on our podcast, but another vision is that eventually we could take all the groups and maybe once a year do a conference, like different from a retreat, because it's got to be bigger, but be like, okay, all these local chapters are coming together here, and we're having a conference once a year, and then we all get to meet each other's people, and it would be like such a beautiful thing to see. So anyways, thank you.
Sounds fabulous.
Yes. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else you wanted to share? You shared a lot of great stuff.
Oh, I think this doesn't just relate to grief, but I think it brought it to the surface more for me. With grief, people in general, I think, will show you who they are. Let them.
Yep.
And then respond accordingly.
That's good.
It's okay if they're not who you thought they were, or maybe they're way more than you thought they were, or way different than you thought they were. All of that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's okay to let some of those people go too, that they're showing you that they're they're not good for you, or they're not good for your life or where you're at. And that's okay.
That's right.
That's okay.
That's
so
good.
just let them show you, because they
That's
will.
good. Yes, you do see who those real friends are when you go through tragedy. The ones who step up and help and aren't afraid to feel uncomfortable. They'll reach out. Like, most of the time when people don't reach out is because they don't know what to say, and that means that they're only looking at themselves. So if I am now fine being in an uncomfortable situation and reaching out to someone, asking how they're like, because if I am not reaching out because I'm scared it might be awkward, then I'm only looking at myself. Like, I need to look at them and be there for them. And so hopefully we have friends and family that do that realize it's okay to talk to somebody and bring up the person's name and say, actually, we like it.
Right.
We like to say their name. We like to talk about them and share memories and all of that stuff. So don't be afraid. I mean, I know I'm talking to the wrong people. We're all widowed on here, but hopefully I do know there are some people that have, well, I think you do have friends or family that listen to the podcast and and get ideas of how to help. So hopefully this gets out to the right people to just be someone who's ready to listen. That's all we need sometimes. You don't have to fix us. You don't have to try to make it better. Just listen. That's it. Listen. Be somebody we can cry with. And that's the most important things when we're going through this, because it can be very, very, very lonely. And I remember those feelings of nobody gets it, nobody. But now I have a huge widow community, so I feel like a lot of people get it, and you do too, so you can reach out to any of us anytime. But if you don't have a widow community, it can feel very lonely. So that's another plug for get involved. It's in the link in the show notes in our Widow Too Soon community page. We passed 1,000. I think we're at 1,100 something this week, and by the time this airs, it'll be even more. Get involved in the community. I don't always post, I don't always respond to everyone, but I always read it and try to do a little care heart. And, but there are people who are really good at responding to everything that are admins and stuff like that. So anyways, all right, well, I'm going to pray for you and then we'll close out. So God, I just thank you so much for Kim. Thank you for how you have healed her heart. And I pray that you'd continue to heal the broken pieces. God, just continue to bring her peace and joy. I pray for many people to come to her group that she's starting, that she'll be able to find those people and be able to just speak to their hearts. And I just thank you for Chad's life and who he was. He's such an amazing guy. And I just pray that his memory lives on. And we just thank you so much for Kim sharing about him today. And we just pray for all the listeners who are here today. I just pray that you cover them with a peace that passes all understanding, whether they're in the beginning of their grief journey or have been here for years. God, I just pray that they will turn to you, the only one who can actually heal us from all of this pain. And we just thank you for all you've done. Amen. Well, if you like this podcast, still have to do this. Give it a little bing, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And I say this every week, but I know Kim has done it. She was one of the first ones. Take a few minutes and write a little review. It really helps us.
Yes.
I remember seeing yours before I really knew you. It really is super helpful because I know I read through reviews of podcasts and stuff. So it is helpful to get the word out. And then if you want to be a guest, there's a link in the show notes. We're still looking for guests, even though I have tons of them, which I'm loving having tons of guests. We'd love to hear your story, because if you're here, that means you're probably widowed and you have a story. So every single person has a story, and we love to hear from you. So anyways, thanks again for being here today, Kim. And we will see you all next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Widowed Too Soon with Michelle Bader Ebersole. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, rate and review. And we'd also love for you to join our Widowed Too Soon community on Facebook. See you next time.